an earlier feature match in the mirror, no less. Devin got a little Merfolk diff, a Mer diff, if you would. Now he's up against Johan on Teamer prowess.
Yeah, traditionally, this is, we believe this may or may not be a win and in for these players. They're both X and 1, breakers withstanding. And this is maybe not the matchup that you would want to play in this sort of setting, Merfolk versus Prowess. Traditionally speaking, not the best matchup for Merfolk. But, Nikachu has some new tools. We have Flare of the Nile and Harbinger of the Seas present in Nikachu's deck. Not sure exactly how relevant Harbinger of the Seas is going to be. But Flare of the Nile potentially being able to counter like a very pivotal lightning bolt and a lord or something like that to maybe present a lethal attack could be very good. And this prowess deck from Jovan, we've maybe seen some slightly new innovations in prowess where some people are playing Galvanic Discharge and Unstable Amulet, Amped Raptor, that whole energy package. Jovan's just kicking it old school. We got 4 expressive iterations, 4 preordains, lava darts, bolts, heats, just I guess you would call this the classic prowess deck.
Yeah, very much, what we saw a little bit before MH3 get released, and still quite good. We talked about before, MH3 has done a good job of sort of, not just going completely nuclear. Lots of decks that you can succeed with here, as Jovan is going to get the turn passed to him. Nikachu just, nothing to do. Just take our vial up. Probably nothing happening here as a Monastery Spirit does get cast.
What's funny, you saw Jovan kind of sweat the draw step a little bit. I think Jovan might have kept a one-lander.
Ooh, we been there before and we'll be there again, as it looks like maybe, he's even playing around, the potential for the Merfolk to come down here, as he did not attack, and Nikachu passed the turn back into turn, plays Voldaren Hexcatcher, gets on to play, takes up the Aether Vial, then plays the Harbinger. And you mentioned, I don't know how good this is going to be here.
Pretty good.
Well, we fetched up a Steam Vent, so now we don't even have Bolt available to us. This is so different than Magus. This is one of the things that, is worth mentioning is like Magus of the Moon, you would be able to have removal spells here. Harbinger doesn't allow that. And, Blue doesn't really get a lot of spot removal.
And he picked up a Flare of the Nile too, Mason. I think we're done here.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, Nikachu has Flare, Force, Vial, so he's out of pressure. Has, the Mutavault, we can animate and do that, but for the most part...
we can animate that Mutavault?
Oh, excuse me, yeah, the Harbinger's on the board. My mistake there. Everything is islands.
Jovan played an island for turn. That's nice. But yeah, there was an interesting... I mean, Jovan definitely... I think the hand had like 2 lightning bolts and 2 unholy heats and 2 prowess creatures with the 1 land. So a pretty respectable keep. Just needed to find that second land. If the second land was an Arid Mesa, maybe could have fetched up a mountain. Interesting enough, Jovan did have the opportunity to fetch a mountain on turn 1 instead of that Steam Vents, but perhaps maybe was, not aware of the Harbinger of the Seas. Maybe wasn't sure 100% what Jonathan was playing. But yeah, this is kind of brutal.
Yeah, and you see Jonathan, Vials in the Lord of Atlantis, attacks and can't be blocked, gets a huge damage swing in there of 7, and Jovan just is basically locked out of casting spells for the remainder of the game until he draws something like a mountain, which I believe his deck, plays a couple.
There's 3 mountains, but hey, we can cast Preordain. I'm just saying, we got Preordains.
True, and maybe we don't have time for that as we see a big swing here, and yet Jovan's actually extend the hand. It's like, you got me on the good ones there. We are going to go into game number 2 here and see what these players have in their sideboard. But yeah, Harbinger of the Seas, kind of a nice one, you got to admit.
Yeah, especially when your opponent has, is playing what is effectively a mono red deck. They keep a 1-lander, they get the Steam Vents, don't play around the Harbinger, and that's all she wrote. And like you said, we're going to go to sideboards and see exactly what these players are working with for game number 2. We're going to start with Jovan's deck list. So there is a Harsh Mentor, a Gigantha, the Wellspring, 2 Flusterstorm, 4 Pick Your Poisons, 2 Spell Pierce, Tormod's Crypt, Soul Guide Lantern, Cursed Totem, and 2 Blood Moons. Like I said, Jovan does, I think, have a relatively, ideally a reasonably good matchup, assuming that there's not, that situation that happened in game 1. Not really a lot here from Jovan. I'm not seeing any of these cards being useful against Merfolk. What do you think, Mason?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably not a matchup you have a lot of points in because, like you said, your removal spells and stuff are pretty good. So I think, I'm not really liking anything here for the matchup. I could maybe see a world where you like make some small change, like you want to spell pierce over some card in your deck you don't super like because spell pierce can hit like a flare or an early aether vial. I think for the most part, though, your main deck is pretty good and you should just resubmit. Now, checking out the other deck here from Nikachu, we have 3 Spreading Seas, 3 Harbinger of the Tides, which means that was the one of fun of that got us there, Devin. 3 Tashani Tidebinder, 3 Subtlety, 2 Merfolk Tristers, and a Dismember. What do you like here against the Prowess deck?
So the Harbinger of the Tides, I believe that's the one that bounces a tap creature. I like that card a lot. So it definitely wants to go towards those. The Tricksters are interesting because if Jovan plays a bunch of spells pre-combat, you can Trickster down the Prowess creature and maybe save a lot of damage that way. Dishana's Tidebinder, interesting at shutting off a Prowess creature, but kind of, it's pretty fragile. I don't think it's ever going to stay in the battlefield for that long. Subtlety is weird because the Prowess deck does rely on creatures, but also subtleting a 1-mana creature doesn't feel that great. And weirdly enough, maybe not weirdly, I think I like I don't know if you want the 4th Dismember. I didn't realize Nikachu had 3 in the main. I like Dismember against Prowess, but I don't know if I like the 4th copy. But definitely wants the Harbingers and the Tricksters for sure, maybe the Dismember.
Yeah, I think those are all pretty reasonable moves there. And my mistake there, I got Harbinger of the Season, Harbinger of the Tides, swapped up there.
So many
But yeah,
Harbingers.
What are they harbinging? What is that? That's what I'm curious. What are they hiding from me? No, but jokes aside here, yeah, I think those are all make a lot of sense. And maybe a situation where on the draw you want the Dismember. That way, you don't get run over by these prowessy creatures. And on the play, you want to cut one. Go back down to 3, maybe even 2. We're gonna have to see what Nikachu wants to do here. As Jonathan is kind of the merfolk guy, as our players are finishing up their sideboarding here and about to finish shuffling. But, a lot of people know him as the merfolk person. So, Jonathan, no stranger to these sort of things, has done well at many events. And merfolk has gotten some serious upgrades, Devin, with the release of both Modern Horizons 2 and 3. And I think it's like probably actually a very good deck right now, or at least the best it's ever been.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think it's pretty underplayed right now. The combination of early pressure backed up by like you have a lot of these different elements where you have the counterspell package, you get to play Force of Negation and Flare of Denial against the combo decks. You get to play a ton of like actual land hate where you have Tide Shaper, Harbinger of the Seas, and even Spreading Seas in the sideboard. So you're good against the Tron decks and Eldrazi decks. Yeah, again, you have the counter spells for combo. The one, pretty glaring weakness is you're traditionally not great against these prowess style decks, and they are sort of picking up as of late. But if you can maybe dodge those, and or maybe have your opponent keep a one lander, then then maybe that can get you across the finish line.
Yeah, and one thing to remember too is like the Merfolk deck has played cards like Chalice before, and so right now, Jonathan's not choosing to make that decision. But if Prowess really picks up and that becomes something that's a bit of a problem, we might see that become, one of these sideboard slots instead of something like a Spreading Seas or a Harbinger, right? And then suddenly a Chalice on 1 is very good. As we saw, Goblins was kind of a deck back before MH2 was released in the MH1 meta, but it could not beat the Prowess deck. So we saw people playing 4 Chalices in their Goblins. So very interesting to see, what players can do against these kind of decks and the links they can go to.
It's funny. I was just gonna mention Jovan has a preordain in his hands, which I guess he's casting on turn 1. I was gonna say, does he have war flashbacks about the Harbinger of the Season game 1 and just gonna get a basic mountain, but he is gonna go for that steam vents there. Potentially has a second land, and like I said, I definitely saw a preordain, so at least wants to cast that on the following turn. And Nikachu's hand looks fine. I mean, it's got a land, a vial, a dismember. If you're Nikachu here, do you go for dismember or vial?
I like the vial, especially with this kind of bigger hand. Every turn that goes by, it becomes worth more and more mana. So this turn you might get hit for a bunch, but honestly, Jovan would much rather develop his board this turn than he would like cast a bunch of cantrips and burn spells, right? Like if I was Jonathan and you told me you're going to cast a preordain and bolt me and hit me for 3, I'd be pretty happy with that exchange. Now, obviously, the Dismember will kind of have issues as the game goes on. Your life total is going to matter, but getting it going now gives you a chance to much sooner get a Harbinger down or violin maybe a Lord in response to something and get a little tricky with it.
Yep, and we are going for the plot. Okay, interesting. Potentially, I want to take a look at Yovan's deck list. I wonder if that means we boarded in some sort of, maybe we boarded in the Spell Pierces because, worried about the presence of something like Dismember and wants to maybe protect that Slick Shot show off because, there's not really a ton of, like, I guess if you're playing around Flare of Denial, you would want to cast it down. I'm trying to think of a reason why you would want to plot it there. Again, maybe Spell Pierce, but not sure if that was a card that was boarded in.
Yeah, I think it's probably Spell Pierce would be the most logical answer I could find. Maybe there's some fringe thing that we're missing, but we'll see in a second. And making it so if Jonathan taps out to play a 2-drop, you don't get dismembered is kind of nice. Where maybe in reality, he preferred to do something like this, and have Jonathan not do much and just overwhelm him on a single turn with some prowessy creatures and threats. But yeah, my gut would be also to hit for 1. But Johan here is 5-1, doing quite well. So I'm going to default to him being right as we do see the preordained coming down.
Yeah, and that's going to trigger some prowess. It's going to get some prowess triggers here. And Preordain's going to be able to dig us a little bit deeper, maybe trying to find something like a Lava Dart. Lava Dart would let us push a lot of damage here. Looking at a Bauble and a Bolt, those both seem fine to me. We're going to go ahead and top both of those. And at least can go, maybe play a Bauble, maybe play a couple Bolts. And we know that Nikachu has the Dismember, so it's not going to be lethal attack this turn, but is going to be able to push a ton of damage. And it's not clear that Nikachu can really, depending on what Nikachu's follow up is here, not really clear whether or not he can actually get under from this.
Yep. And we're gonna have to see how to do it now. Also, what's noting, Jonathan better known as Nikachu here. The rest of the lands in the hand are Mutavaults too. So we don't have much colored mana, but we do have a lot of chump blockers. So we maybe get hit for a bit here, but if we get Dismember down the Slick Shot, maybe we fall to 8 and then can chump block for a bit. So I'd be curious to see how this game unfolds from here.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Bauble is going to target Jonathan. Take a peek there. I think that was maybe another Aether Vial. Not exactly what Jonathan wants here.
Yeah.
Both creatures coming in. Dismember most likely going to be cast here. Wonder if I can't tell if there's there is a Tide Shaper. Okay, so maybe Nikachu thinking about vialing in the Tide Shaper to chump block this turn, which currently is preventing 3 damage, but presumably will probably prevent more than 3 damage. So interesting to see if we're going to fire that off here.
Darn. Kind of one of the weird parts of paper coverage. All right, looks like it is going to connect for 3. Knock Nikachu down.
Yeah, and then we're going to put in that Tide Shaper, and then, like you said, Nikachu's got a couple of Lords and a couple of Mutavaults left over. So Vial goes to 2. You can vial in 1 Lord, cast 1 more Lord, and that's, gives you...
I like that. Open information, trying to figure it out. Also, nice guy, Nikachu. Remind him of his bottle trigger.
Yeah, I think that the vials face up because both players know about it, so I think it's just, yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit of dramatics. I like it.
You know this. I know this. I also know it's a terrible card that I don't want here, but...
Yeah. And what am I going to do? And it is interesting because, this turn you could see something like develop the second vial, maybe, play the Mutavault, get in a little attack, put in the Lord, put a little bit of damage on Jovan, and just start the race. And if, he attacks back, you animate your Mutavault and try to block.
Yeah, so the Tide Shaper is coming in. No Lords necessarily yet. Okay, so looks like our plan is just, like you said, maybe just chump block with Mutavault. Although maybe lining up a double block potentially?
Yeah.
There's a Preordain. It's going to let Jovan dig a little bit deeper. And that's an Expressive Iteration and a Breach, which really quickly go to the bottom. I think Jovan's just looking for a second creature at this point. Jovan's going to Bauble himself. Does not like what he sees. We're going to go ahead and crack that. Love it. Just take the mountain from the top and put it right into play.
Yeah, it's something I didn't want. Probably a land. Yeah. All right, we're going to see what exactly Jovan wants to do here. We do see a Bolt coming down. Now, funny enough, if we had the right combination of cards, we could have saved our creature there, but We did not have the right combination of lords, etc.
Bolt going after Tide Shaper there. Interesting.
Might be a playing around Flare Denial line. Maybe you want to
Yeah.
do something like play another creature.
Yeah, you want to see if the Bolt resolves before you go to combat. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I not 100% sure, but also in this sort of matchup, just removing the pressure is going to probably go pretty far. As this Bolt's going to hit Jonathan down to 9, take 5 damage down to 4.
That one's going upstairs.
Yep, on the noggin.
The noggin whack.
Yeah, and I'm a little interested. I thought for sure with such a big Soul Scar mage, we might see the attempt to block with Mutavault, but didn't even seem to. I mean, if we did consider it, it was very quick / had pre-thought about it.
Now, the Flare of Denial is actually kind of a nice pickup here, because how much damage can Nikachu push? You can certainly make it a 2-turn clock if you want to. You can go Violin, Lord, animate Mutavault, and still have the Mutavault and the Lord back to block. So, yep, we're going to go Fire Up, hit with both. Then we can go play Mutavault, chump with Mutavault, and we could use the Lord to sack the Flare. But I guess if we use the Lord to sack the Flare, we won't necessarily have lethal next turn. So ideally, Nikachu doesn't want to use the Flare if he doesn't have to.
Yeah. And one of the things that's interesting about this Izzet Prowess deck is it's able to chain spells a lot more than the Boros one we saw earlier. The Boros one, like we talked about with Adam Weiss, very much more a like actual burn deck, and this one is like a prowessy deck, right? It is trying to chain spells.
Right.
So preordain here, this sort of thing. If it was a Boros Charm, this game would be over, but also be very different game.
Lava Dart.
Yeah, Lava Dart's a good one.
Yeah, I guess the issue with the Lava Dart is the creatures are a little too big at this point. Like the Lord of Atlantis is a 3/3 and the Mutavault's a 4/4. So I believe Jovan just bought them both. Maybe just looking for a Lightning Bolt. Because then Bolt would be able to clear the untapped Lord of Atlantis. I mean, I guess you're forcing a chump block with the Mutavault either way. And Jovan probably assumes that. Maybe looking for, like I said, a haste creature, a Swiss Spear or a Soul Scar would definitely help. Or sorry, Swiss Spear or Slick Shot would definitely go a long way for Jovan.
Jovan taking a look on top. Jovan's hand is Underworld Breach and Dragon's Rage Channeler. So
not the best.
Yeah, not really what he's hoping for.
Can breach the Bauble back a bunch, I guess.
That might just have to be Jovan's line. We are going to see Mutavault animated and gets a chance to block.
I was going to say, this is a 4/4 Mutavault. That just eats the Soul Scar mage. Oh, boy.
Yeah. And we're going to see the concession. Congratulations to Jonathan there. Jovan fought hard, and did a good job applying pressure, but took a little bit too much damage from some of the stuff. And then, these merfolk creatures, they scale together pretty well and do a ton of damage, right? Once they start getting going. So even though we didn't have a lot of pressure early, we were able to get there. So we're going to get an interview with Jonathan, see how he's liking the merfolk deck. And then we're going to get you our backup feature match as well, which is pretty exciting. We have one of our series winners in May French for that one. So stay tuned. We're going to have her on screen in just a minute. But what do you think about this merfolk deck before we start asking the master himself? How do you feel about it?
I mean, he makes it look really good. Like you mentioned, we've been talking about this a little bit, where Merfolk got a ton of new upgrades in the past couple of sets, and like you said, the master himself is at work. Svelun, Harbinger, all these cards seem to really add a ton to it, and Flare of Denial as well. We've seen that card in action a couple of times. And one thing we didn't mention, 4 copies of Sink into Stupor in his list as well. Nice to be able to pitch to Force Negation and things like that. So yeah, looks like a very well-crafted list, and not surprised to see it coming from Nikachu.
Yeah, very well tuned. And Sink into Super is a card too that lets you have more lands in your deck, as all these MDFC lands do, but be an actual real spell, which is really cool to sort of see that happen here in this matchup. And just in general, having more real draws comes with some real, life loss. And then this matchup matters a ton, right? If we had to, deal that 3 damage early and we had to put it in untapped, well, the Lava Dart would have won. Totally different game. Luckily, we were able to not do that. But, with great power comes great responsibility with these sort of MDFCs. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of where people land on what the actual best number is. And, will they play this one and also like maybe a mixture of the other one, right? The like lab experiment where it can change the target of something. So very interested to see sort of the development with this as time goes on. Really quickly here, while waiting for Jonathan to come over, let's quickly show where we're going to next be going to, which is Chicagoland, July 13th and 14th. We're going to have a 10K Modern Showdown. So you're going to want to stay tuned and see that happen. Make sure to click the follow button so you don't miss that action. Then Sunday, 5K Legacy Trial. We love Legacy. We'd love to bring y'all to this awesome format. So if you like playing it, consider going out and supporting us there. We love to bring Legacy whenever we can to the series. So doing that, I guess we'll take a look at the Morris. He's taking a second, a little victory lap after winning there. Let's check out Madison is up next, August 24th and 25th with the 10K Modern Showdown and the Sunday 10K Team Trios, and with these showdown events, Devin, we were talking about our leaderboard a little bit. If you win one of those, you go straight to our championship. And Jonathan is ready to talk to us, and he might be trying to go to our championship today.
Oh,
Congratulations on being 6-1 now. How are you feeling about the Merfolk?
Oh, I'm great. I didn't play against Scam all day. I mean, sort of. I played against Gorios once, but like Scam is my only counter, and I didn't face any Rakdos or Mono Black Scam, so I would say St. Louis was very nice to me. But the only thing I lost to was Merfolk, so Merfolk is truly undefeated today.
That's very true. So, one more round left in the Swiss. You've obviously been doing very well. What has been your favorite addition to the deck so far from MH3?
I am so underwhelmingly, I'm so disappointed with how this metagame shaked up. Like, Harbinger of the Seas, that should be a great card, right? Well, not when, Mono Red Ruby Storm exists, or Mono Black Scam, or Boros Energy, or Mono, or two-color, or Mono this. It actually has been incredibly underwhelming, but it is still the one card that just gives me free wins, especially against blue decks, funny enough. It's like it's just a house versus blue decks. Oh, I can tell you didn't put a basic mountain in your Izzet deck because you have a Scalding Tarn and didn't fetch in response to this thing. So yeah, it's probably that is the best card that has been added because that has given me definitely a lot of free wins, not only online but also here today.
Yeah, I mean, it gave you a free win in that last game too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
The other card that Mason and I were discussing in between sideboarding was Sink into Stupor. The full 4 copies of that card.
Yeah.
It looks like you shaved a couple of lands for it. How has that card been? Have you been casting the front side of it a lot, or has it mostly just been a land?
No, it's actually I cast the front side a ton of times. It's I beat a Nadu deck because I was top decking and that wasn't a land. It was Sink into Stupor. And I bounced their Nadu back to their hand, and that was the turn that I needed to win the game. Otherwise, that might not have actually happened. So I'm using it more as a counter spell than a bounce spell, like as a Venser of some sort. But it is coming up a ton and makes the deck a lot more flood resistant for sure. It's probably better than Flare of Denial, as weird as that sounds. It has come up more for me because I don't have to sacrifice a creature in play. Again, this metagame's not good for Flare of Denial. Like, people are coming out me fast with Boros Energy. I can't sacrifice my creature. I want to keep them on the board. I don't want to lose my little creatures over here. But unfortunately, it is good versus the top 2 decks. I think Flare of Denial, very good versus Ruby Storm and also Nadu. So big decks in the metagame. But also just, really awkward versus Scam. Super awkward. I guess if I'm on the play and I end up having, a 1-drop in play, I'll counter a Grief on turn 1, but it's really situational. And if I hard cast it, then it just clogs up my 3-drop slot. Would have been great in the prior metagame, but the whole metagame upfeebled, and now it's a just completely different world right now.
Makes sense. Well, thank you so much for taking a second to come sit down and talk with us. Good luck in your last round. Hopefully we'll see you in top 8 championing the Folk. We're going to go to our backup feature match right now and get some more magic for everyone. So you go relax, have fun before the last round of Swiss, and good luck in that round. But yeah, Devin, this deck has been really impressive here for Merfolk. I've been, we talked about it earlier. It looks good. Like, Nikachu said, there's some awkwardness, but whatever, there's going to be some awkwardness just like me at a party, and let's go down to our backup feature match and see that. Got him on that one, chat. Just easy. Too easy, actually.
I was not prepared for that one.
neither for people at me at the party. Anyways, I just show up uninvited. 4-color Nadu from your Showdown winner, May French, on the left versus Ian on Tron on your right.
All right, so 4-color Nadu, I believe this is very, very similar, if not the same, to the list that we saw earlier from Connor Mullally, deploying the Orcish Bowmasters, and I believe this is, I think this is a Canister innovation. Canister's been playing a ton of this Nadu deck and has been liking the Bowmasters a lot, and it does make sense, especially if you're going for the Colosseum kill. I'm trying to figure out what May's. Okay, it looks like May does not have the Colosseum, and she has the
She's
Oracle
Oracling.
instead. Okay.
Yep. And actually, May pulling out her token really quick here that she won for winning our showdowns, which everyone who wins a showdown does get.
That's
Maybe
a nice flex, right?
Yeah, I think it's a food token because I think she might be playing like Gilded Goose. So, it's good like ice cream yum. But yeah, there you go. And such a sick flex. She's like, yeah, I won the last one of these. It's so big. Like, you can be you.
Do you think that's the only reason she played one Gilded Goose? Is just because she's like, man, I really want to get a food into my deck somewhere. And it's like, I don't know how else to do that,
Yeah, I mean, Gilded Goose is good like ice cream. So it's important to fit that in your deck. And it has some uses. One thing that's really interesting I saw some people talking about was that you can Chord of Calling in response to a Pick Your Poison trying to flying kill your Nadu, and boom, there it goes. But yeah, we are going to see the Kozilek's command come down off Ugin's Labyrinth, the card that you pinged as maybe one of the best cards in Modern Horizons 2. And I'm sorry, Modern Horizons 3, and I have to agree, it's an all-star, letting us play this card quite early, killing May's Mana Dork, and putting us 2 spawns for ourselves into play, jumping Ian all the way up to 6 mana next turn if we're playing an Eldrazi card, thanks to the Temple.
Yeah, command has been crazy for me in a lot of the Eldrazi decks that I've played. I think it's a little bit better in this version, which is a little like this is the bigger mana version with Tron, and it's like playing a little bit higher in the curve, and that's where I've been more impressed with this card. But yeah, it's if you ever get to start onto any of the soul lands, you have 8 total soul lands in your deck. If you start on 2 of those, just you're on the play, kill your 1-drop, make 2 mana. It just, like you said, just gets you to these like completely ridiculous the amounts of mana on the 3rd turn, lets you start casting 7 drops on 3, maybe even 8 if you have another soul land. And the fact that it's so versatile. It's Graveyard Hate, which traditionally is cards like this have a little bit of diminishing returns as we see a Trinisphere cast here, and Bowmaster in response. But yeah, love that card.
Yep. Trinisphere is one of the big reasons to play these Tron decks is we're seeing these early Trinispheres come down as soon as turn 2, and that is making it so decks like Ruby Storm have a much harder time of actually comboing. This slows them down a lot, and decks like Nadu, if you're on the play, this makes it so you just lock out their turn number 2 if they didn't have the Mana Dork, and that's going to put them in a very awkward position. Now, May is 5-1 and done a lot of testing for this event. She really wants to be, the player of the year. That's why she's still out here grinding. This NRG was a bit of a trip for her, and she was talking about how she kind of wanted to low-key skip, but she wants to have that run for player of the year. So she has been putting in a ton of time as Nadu comes on down here after the attack on the Bowmaster.
And what's interesting about this Trinisphere is it really is kind of hampering May's ability to try and go off, because without it, she'd be able to just go, like if she had the Shuko and the Springheart, she could just go Shuko, Springheart, whatever, game's over. But now she has to wait an additional turn because it's 3 mana for the Shuko, 3 mana for the Springheart. Doesn't really have the ability to deploy both of those in the same turn.
Yep. And see Ian get protection from the One Ring, pass and turn back. And that's one of the other big things about this deck is, turn 2 Trinisphere, really strong. Turn 3, the One Ring with your double lands, actually very, very good at sort of undoing the cost that you need, which is like you have to imprint one of these bigger cards. And, those bigger cards require having a lot of mana and resources, and you lose those with the library itself, right? So it's an interesting position. Now, Bowmaster, still nice against the One Ring, but, going to be putting May in a much worse position than if he just had something like a Thought-Knot Seer,
Yeah, and funny enough, May, so we saw Connor earlier playing the Cephalid Colosseum as the kill condition. May is playing the Thassa's Oracle, which, interesting enough, does get around the One Ring protection, because Thassa's Oracle just says you win the game. It doesn't, say target your opponent, doesn't say deal 20 damage to target opponent. So it completely gets around that ring protection, which, not going to be super relevant here, because I don't think she has the ability to set up the combo through that Trinisphere. but could matter later down the road is, as we see. And also, Mason, Trinisphere really good against Summoner's Pact.
It is not weak, as we like to say. As like you mentioned, if May could do something like play Wall of Roots, play the Nantuko, get a big board presence, and then play this Outriders, the game would be over. Just be done. But it's gotten slowed down a lot here. So it looks like we're not going to draw any cards in the One Ring. We really want to protect this spawn.
Okay, Saga's going to go to chapter numero trace. We're going to float up mana. Now, taking a look at Ian's deck list, what cards do we have to get here? This is the Emrakul version, so there's 1 copy of Cookbook, 4 expedition maps, and that's it. Okay, so 1 Cookbook, 4 maps. We are going to go ahead and get the map. It's going to get us Tron Land number 2, and we will have to see how Ian wants to proceed from here. So not able to assemble Tron here, but is able to. Interesting. Ian did not tap the Bowmasters. Okay, right. Never mind.
Yeah, it looks like Ian had big plans with the Eldrazi spawn, and he didn't want it to get shot down. And that was May's only good target since he had ring protection. So
yep.
Now we do have a second Trinisphere. That's going to make it so cards like Boseiju aren't an out here for May.
So we can Court of Calling for 2. That gets the Spring Heart. And then if she finds a white source, I think she had the Outrider in hand. So does not currently have white mana to get the Outrider into play. So my guess is Nantuko, although she was lining up the Safekeeper, which is also interesting because maybe the Safekeeper gets you to the white source, but then if the Safekeeper finds you the white source, then you don't have the Spring Heart Nantuko. So it's kind of interesting here.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of interesting choices when you're playing this Nadu deck. Your easy draws that when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, so easy. You just run your opponents over, nothing to even think about. In games where their opponent puts back a little resistance, it doesn't mean you can't, fight through it, but there's a lot of options available to use. It looks like final answer is Bowmaster, and she can shoot her own Nadu, which will trigger the Nadu. Bowmaster, honestly, that might have been the problem for Ian, is if he activates the One Ring, May draws a card too. Maybe it wasn't the spawn. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point, because the Bowmaster can just target the Nadu. Yeah. Okay.
And now that we have 2 of those in play, it is,
that ring is not getting tapped.
Yeah. And then the army can now shoot itself too. So only 2 triggers still, it happens, but it would happen. Now here's a Shuko.
Okay. I was going to say, does she draw the white source, but she just finds the Shuko instead. So this should be close to all she wrote. Now, I'm trying to think if Ian can have... take a look at Ian's deck list. There are 2 copies of Dismember, Kozilek's Command. Do we have enough mana? No, there's only 2 mana available, so can't really command anything relevant.
Yeah, I think May probably should have shot her own creature, but ends up just shooting Ian. And now she's going to start comboing off.
Shukos.
Yeah. Shukos, not Shuka. They should have made the card templated better. As we are going to, there she goes. She hit a land, but without the Nantuko in play, it's very awkward for her.
Yeah, what's interesting about this, Mason, is that Trinisphere actually could... Okay, she did hit land number 3. I was going to say this Trinisphere could mess things up for her. Because it's going to limit. Usually you get into spots like this and you just say, okay, well, now I can cast, play a 1-mana Delighted Halfling, target that twice, maybe a 2-mana Nantuko, but even those 1 and 2-mana spells still cost 3 mana. So the Trinisphere might actually still be able to trip May up a little bit.
Yeah, and we're going to have to see what she wants to do here. She could play something like Springheart Nantuko, get 2 more looks. She could also cord for another Nadu and get more, an additional 8 looks at the top of her deck. A lot of options available to her. Like she has Invoke Endurance to... I guess she just spells 3 mana, excuse me. That line doesn't work, but looks like she's
maybe lining something. Up a cord. Yeah, that's just maybe lining up a cord. You can cord for Nantuko and then just try to hit lands from there. You can say, like, tap your 4 creatures in one of your lands, cord for Nantuko, equip that twice, try to spike land number 3 that lets you cast another spell. Maybe the better line is cord for Nadu, though.
Yeah, I think that might be kind of what the judge May is asking the judge, and they're just going to double check with the head judge is okay, if I chord for Nadu, I get to redo the triggers on the moving around from Nadu. And the answer is yes. The ability is tied to that copy of Nadu. So
According to the Trinosphere, I wonder what the question is here.
yeah, maybe it's how does Trinosphere interact with my chord of calling? Does it like mess up? Like, do I have to make X3? Maybe something like that. I'm not exactly sure. Looks like the plan is to play a Wall of Roots and then chord. So that Wall of Roots gets new Shuko activations. Probably not chording for Nadu if that's the case. Oh no, looks like it was.
Yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's still a fizzle rate, right? You get to look at, 10 cards, and of those 10 cards, we kind of need, ideally, 3 lands and an Antuco?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder if maybe a slight misstep there from May not equipping the wall before we did this, losing out on 2 looks. Now, we're going to still see 10 cards, but, the Trinosphere is making it awkward.
Okay, there's the Nantuko, and there's 2 lands, and I believe we get 4 more looks. Okay, so we've targeted the Orc Army once, so now I'm guessing we go fetch, play the Nantuko for 3. Oh, we don't need to fetch because of the Yavimaya. So play the Nantuko, and then we have now 5 more looks. But then I guess the other question is how many blue sources do we have left? Because we need to be able to cast the Oracle.
Yeah, and it could also be a spot where maybe May just puts most of her deck into play and then just passes and leaves like 2 cards or whatever, and the plan is just to hard cast. And hope that Ian can't do anything that stops it, like a Karn, Forest Stone Brain or whatever. But
well, I guess if you do that, then you run into the issue of All is Dust, maybe. But then I guess you can just recombo if you get All is Dusted.
Yeah, if you get All is Dusted, as long as you have the Oracle in hand, you should be fine.
Yeah.
Jason,
is that an Okina Temple to the Grandfathers?
It is an Okina Temple to the Grandfathers.
Jump scare.
Yeah. Getting a little value. No respect for Harbinger. Nikachu salivating seeing that one. And what you're seeing here is she's moving the dice over basically to represent the amount of tokens left that can activate.
Okay. Well, yeah. So the island and the Odawara should be good enough. I didn't realize we had 2 more untapped blue sources, but I guess even if you didn't, you could just play the Safekeeper, sack lands, evoke Endurance, then go again. So I think it's just, yeah. At this point, it's deterministic, I believe.
Yeah. Well, she maybe has run out of land. I think she's used all of her things. So it's just a matter of does she have more lands in her deck, which will give her more looks. Looks like she does.
Yeah, looking at her deck list, total number of fetchables is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I don't know exactly how many are in play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's one of those, we'll figure it out as we go, I think. Oh, Dried Arbor's huge. That gives you 4 new looks now. Yeah, you see May just sort of pick up all 4 of the cards. Just kind of shortcutting, like, clearly you're not going to try and stop me until I present, no cards left in my deck. And, yep, that's going to mean the Oracle comes down and May French wins that game 1-0. We're going to head to our sideboards here in a second. But very impressive showing there for the Nadu deck, being able to fight the Trinosphere. Early Trinosphere did slow May down, but we didn't have that pressure that we saw in our round 4 feature, right? That round, we saw the early Emrakul world anew both games, and that was enough to be like, okay, I can't really beat this. This game, sometimes your Tron deck locks them out, but doesn't have the pressure to back it up.
Absolutely. It was an absolutely phenomenal display, and we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get you right over to game number 2 because this is our time-shifted match, and we are starting with a Devourer of Destiny. Looks like Ian is going to keep a card on top. This is a card that has really impressed me, Mason, this Devourer of Destiny. I've been playing a lot of different Eldrazi decks, and with the additional redundancy of having 8 soul lands, it's the combination of that plus Devourer allowing you to not only more consistently have your second soul land, but also to be able to find the payoff for having that extra mana. Just a phenomenal card all around.
And it looks like May's checking her sideboard on this surveil, maybe wanting to make sure that she's like, okay, do I have endurances in my deck? And I'll take that as a yes, she does.
Good check.
As you see both players kind of laugh like, okay, I know what's up. Now, worth noting, if Ian has something like Karn the Great Creator into like, a Tormund's Crypt, that could complicate the game a little.
Yeah.
But, that's not something that we're seeing at the moment. So we'll deal with that when the time comes.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Tormod's crypt. I mean, I guess if May can find Bristly Bill and have a creature that can attack that turn, you can maybe Bristly Bill to make the creature big enough.
Bristly Bill is my father. Please call me Bill. I think we're going to see a Tron land for the turn. And once again, Kozilek's Command, being a kindred Eldrazi spell means that the temple can tap for it. And this is something I was talking to earlier with Drake and a friend yesterday, where I just think people, they're really starting to now get like Kozilek's Command basically can like be, 2 mana kill something and store all the mana I have until the next turn. We've seen a lot of it used on early stuff, but if May was playing something like Omnath, we might not, that's the first threat. Ian were to kill it and then just jump straight to a card like Ulamog, even if he didn't have Tron complete.
Absolutely. So we'll have to see if May has the signature play here. And Nadu, we're gonna go to Teferi. Teferi potentially bouncing the Urza Saga. Yeah, there we go. Get that out of here. It's a nice little, very, very, very good tempo play here for May. It's going to set Ian back a little bit because, like you said, potentially Ian wants to get towards Tron. Maybe he wanted to find a map because I see a power plant in Ian's hand. So, going to be a little bit delayed at getting towards Tron. As far as the payoffs are concerned, I want to take a look at what Ian's playing for expensive cards. There's the 4 Devourers, 2 Emrakul, the World Anew, and 1 Ulamog, along with the Rings and the Karn the Great Creator. So, yeah, but I guess there's the 3 All Is Dust too.
Yeah, All Is Dust, weirdly, like one of the more clutch cards. You're seeing it be one of the go-to cards to put under Ugin's Labyrinth because, one, it's 7 mana, so it does all of that, and your Eldrazi Temple's hell cast it. But just having that board wipe is so massive. And, if you do something like Temple, Kozilek's Command, all right, next turn, land, Wrath you, that can be a huge sort of thing, and getting all colored permanents is massive. So, we're seeing a lot of innovation in these Tron decks over the first couple of weeks here at MH3, and I'm excited to see as that continues from the players, as it looks like we're going to once again play the Urza Saga and just develop the Trinisphere and pass the turn.
Yeah, so we saw the Trinisphere last game was not really that much of a concern for May. I mean, it messed up a little bit. I think it maybe delayed her going off for 1 turn. But as far as actually, once she has the combo pieces in play, it's not really doing a ton. But yeah, we'll have to see. It, like I said, it's going to make it so she can't play something like a Nadu and a Shuko this turn, which could certainly be a bit of a reprieve. But we are shocking here, and that's a 4 mana play. We have
that's massive.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think the way to maybe look at Trinisphere from these Tron decks against Nadu is it's much more like a pebble in your shoe, right? It's very annoying. It makes you walk a little funny for a second, but it doesn't stop you. Like against Storm, if they don't find some way to answer the Trinisphere right away, they can't really do anything, right? They fall off.
I don't know about you, Mason, but pebbles kind of stop me sometimes. Depends on how big the pebble is, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, is it like the baby from the Flintstones? I'm not going to step on the baby a bunch. Is it a small pebble? I might walk a little weird. Depends.
Also, if you look at the art for Trinisphere, the pebble is clearly on fire. If that was in your shoe, you'd probably be dead,
Well, maybe you would be. I'm built different.
Shots fired.
As we see Ian here trying to figure out what exactly he wants to do, has, a lot of mana available, 6 for Eldrazi spells, 5 for normal. But can even do something like Kozilek's Command here as a way to scry and draw and get a little bit of mana. So, this is one of the interesting things about this, right? Is you can just spend the mana and then draw a card. And then if you draw something like the One Ring, well, it'd only cost you 2 to get that deep scry. Which, right now we have not a lot of mana, but probably actually should have just used all the spawn, just to double your amount of scrying.
Right. And I mean, honestly, Ian now at the point where Ian now has access to 8 mana in play. If Ian can find a soul land, that's going to get to 10. That could be a potential Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, if Ian can find that second soul land. Now, only 1 copy in the deck. Not quite enough for Emrakul, the World Anew, because, I guess unless he has the Cookbook. The Cookbook would be enough for Emrakul if he also has that.
Cookbook? I know a card you've played a lot, a real banger in these Tron decks. And one of the things I've really liked from that deck too, from that card in this deck from playing it, is sometimes you also just like have a cookbook and you're playing against Burn or whatever, and you're just like, oh, thank God. I'll discard random Tron land I don't need anymore, gain 3 life, and like eventually set up that stuff. So it comes up in a really big way as Nantuku is coming down.
Yeah, with the amount of, I mean, I've played, like you said, a lot of these food decks, and every time, like, if you have turn 1 cookbook on the play against Burn, they're dead. That's it. The game's over.
Speaking of dead, May's moving really quickly here, and if she has, I guess she's already played land for turn, so she can't get the Nadu down and the Shuko, but she seems very confident about what's happening here.
Be like Nadu Cord for Safekeeper, maybe?
Yeah, and she has Teferi, so she gets to kind of wait and decide that here. We are going to see an Eldrazi Temple from Ian here. Come on down. And
oh yeah, her hands just rolled up. She's got Cord and Summoner's Pact too.
Oh yeah, and even a Boseiju, so that if Ian plays, like Damping Matrix or something out of the board with a Karn, she can still go off. And this Nadu deck, it's quite good. Players have been working on it a lot, and I think that's one of the big benefits it gets is that there's just been a lot of time put into that deck. As Devourer of Destiny is going to get cast, target the Nadu for exiling it.
Yep,
and
we're going to go ahead, and that's going to be a Cord for a Safekeeper. Safekeeper is going to protect the Nadu, and very, very likely May French will be able to win this game next turn. Remember, around turn 1, she had to look through her sideboard before we bin that Thassa's Oracle, presuming, like you mentioned, probably wanted to make sure we had that Endurance in, and assuming we do have the Endurance in, then this should be good enough.
Yep. Well played on her part, by the way, to make sure to do it with the trigger on the stack as to not draw. Maybe she only has one Sylvan Safekeeper left in the deck.
Yep.
So Safekeeper's also going to trigger the Nadu, so now she has a Thoughtseize in hand, Summoner's Pact, Boseiju. And with Teferi in play, unless Ian does something now, it's just a matter of going through the motions and hoping not to hit the insanely low fail rate. I guess even if you do, you can Teferi bounce the Nadu and go again. Now you'll lose the Teferi protection.
On 3.
Yeah, but you will, get another look.
Yeah, I mean, there is theoretically a world where she breaks because she only has 4 lands. Well, I guess 5 because the Dryad Arbor. But if she misses on lands in the first 5 draw steps, then she runs out of lands to sack the Safekeeper, maybe. But
it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The first 14 draws, right? Like everyone is 2, and she has 7 things to move the Shuko around.
Does she have the Shuko though?
Well, she has the cord for the rider. I forget its
name. The Outrider. Okay, right.
Yeah, so she has like a ton of looks.
I forgot about the Pact. The Pact makes it. The Pact should mean it's game over. Yeah.
Yeah. And we hit a land here, which is going to get us another thing. And Kozilek's Command is going to get used to try and hit the Sylvan Safekeeper. May's just going to actually target the Safekeeper with itself. Now she's going to hit the Delighted Halfling. We're going to get a mana back. We do have Dismember. We could try to Dismember something, but it's going to probably just end up getting a land sacrificed. But, got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, Dismember target Nadu. That'll prompt the Safekeeper activation. And that should be good enough. This Nadu deck is looking very, very impressive. We've seen it a couple of times on camera, and I got to say, I kind of like this black version. I don't remember if Connor was also playing the Thoughtseizes, but I know Connor had at least the Bowmasters, and then, the black sideboard cards. They seem like they kind of add a little bit more depth to the deck, where it's, good, like Fatal Push, good against cards like Harsh Mentor. Thoughtseize can be good against just a plethora of things, and it really does seem like it adds another dimension to this deck.
Yep. We saw Connor Mullally in round 1, as we do see the concession here from Ian. Connor actually had main deck Thoughtseize. Game 1, round 1, he just went turn 1 Thoughtseize. And those sort of evolutions are kind of what I think a lot of people were curious about, right? It's like, all right, so version 1 of Nadu is kind of all-in creatures. And then what happens? Like, can we play a real deck with this? And we saw Nick Winsauce play the first challenge, which is Jund Nadu. Just playing a bunch of real cards. And that one hasn't really stuck in a real way. It was very telling to me. It was like, oh, okay, I think this can really happen. We're going to be very interested to see how players adapt. And with the Pro Tour next weekend, we'll have to see. But for right now, we're going to take a quick break as we're about to hit time in the round, and we'll be right back with more Modern action. So stay tuned.
Hooves dig into fields of black, chase valiantly towards the dread. Shield and armor aglow and bright, countless hearts and lances keen. They ride into the night. The beasts above, they shriek and soar, spew flames of ghostlight from their jaws that eat the skies and burn the flesh, and albeit crowned with firelight, they ride on into the night. The new 2024 exclusive line, crowned with the first printed boulder and zip folio ever. An astonishing artwork made by one of Magic the Gathering's most beloved artists, Dominic Mayer.